Well, we're about a quarter of the way through the NASCAR season. And I thought I'd come on here every quarterly review and give my sort of review of what I've seen so far throughout the season and talk about some of the good, some of the bad, some of the ugly. Speak about some of the drivers, the sport as a whole, in terms of the officiating and things that's been going on with the series as a whole. But also just talk about the drivers who have disappointed me and some of the drivers that surprised me and the quality of the racing as a whole. Let's jump into the biggest surprises of the year so far. Starting off on the positive side of the coin when it comes to some of the drivers throughout the series in NASCAR so far that's really impressed me is Shane Van Gisbergen. That's right, SVG. Man, this dude has impressed me really all season long. He's impressed me with his ability to get acclimated to the Xfinity Series and racing around the drivers in the Xfinity Series along with Cup as well. And along with that, he's showing great promise on the ovals and the short tracks as a whole as he continues to prove he's one of the best road course racers in NASCAR as a whole. Through the first 9 races of the year, he's got multiple top 10 finishes and a top 5 finish this season, coming at COTA with an average finish of 16.8 this season, which, to be honest, is not too shabby for a rookie transitioning into NASCAR at the age that he's at. Another driver to speak on who's really impressed me so far this season has really somewhat surprised me for how well he's been able to just come out the gate firing on all cylinders. And that's been the best driver in Xfinity all year long so far, and that's Chandler Smith. This dude has been on a tear, winning multiple races this season in dominating fashion, along with finishing the first 6 races all inside the top 10. This man has come out of the gate just swinging for the fences with a blistering pace with an average finish of 7.0. He's just been on a tear and doing what he's supposed to do at the top level, the second top level of NASCAR so far this season. When I look at him, if he continues to keep this up, and it's definitely going to be tough, but if he continues to keep up the pace that he's on, he'll be well on his way to another dominant Xfinity season, which is what he needs, because I believe eventually he'll move up and likely get a guaranteed Cup ride in the near future, either next year or the year after that, because he's got all the makings to be a great driver in this sport, and he's shown it so far in Xfinity this season. Another guy who's really impressed me, who's really kind of flowing under the radar this season for what he did, who just won at Dega this past weekend and has really, like I said, flowing underneath my radar going into the season this year, was Jesse Love. I didn't put much stock into him winning an ARCA Series title because, let's be honest and let's face it, the ARCA Series isn't very good. But him winning and going into Xfinity and already having multiple top 5s and multiple poles, along with showing great ability on super speedways, has already squarely put him as someone who's, to me, a driver to watch as the season continues to progress going forward. It wouldn't shock me one bit if he's a multi-time winner at the end of this season and is a championship contender going into the final few races of the year either. He's setting a blistering pace so far his own right with a 9.0 average finish so far, which is amazing, and a 6.7 average start, which is ridiculous, along with leading the third most laps or the fourth most laps in the series so far. So he's definitely going to be a guy to watch going forward as this season continues to progress. Another guy, this time now it's, down in trucks right now, who really came out firing on all cylinders as well in terms of his performance, is Taylor Gray. Already in just 5 starts in his truck series, career this season, he's already has as many top 5s this season as he's ever had in his truck series career so far. He's got a blistering pace he's setting right now too, with a great average finish so far this season as well. And he's running a limited schedule under JGR and Xfinity this season, and already brought home a top 3 finish at Richmond in his only start in Xfinity this year. So he's another guy who's a one to watch type of guy that you need to pay attention to, who really came this season underneath my radar as well, but it's really shown up and shown out. So it definitely will be interesting going forward how well he's able to continue to progress in the truck series, and maybe if he can be a championship contender as the season wanes in the back end of the year. The way the playoff format is, and I've always spoke on it, you never know what might happen. So fingers will be crossed for him. And moving on, when it comes to one last guy that really has impressed me, and when it comes to Cup, that's kind of flown a little bit underneath the radar a little bit, but really he's got all of the makings for being a top guy in the sport, and somebody who has a lot of talent, who's young, who's shown a lot of improvement since his rookie season, and that's Mr. Ty Gibbs. Now I know a lot of people don't like Ty Gibbs. People give him a lot of rag and a lot of flack because of who his granddaddy is and how he's come up through the sport and whatever. But he's already having his best season to date so far this season at Cup as a sophomore, you know, with a 9-place jump basically in his average finish from 18.4 all the way to a staggering about a crazy 18.4 all the way to 11.7, which is pretty good for a guy of his magnitude to be running this well compared to what he was at last season. He's also sitting about 8th in points right now, and he's actually been good qualifying as well, as he's basically qualified better than where he's finished, with 11.1 average start. So he's doing what he needs to do in his sophomore year to improve, something that a lot of other drivers who are in their sophomore year have not been able to do so far. That's really kind of disappointed me. And that's a perfect segue to jump into some of the disappointments this year in terms of drivers that's really disappointed me so far this year. Now, really jumping into the disappointments driver analysis side of the video and, getting into the drivers that have disappointed me so far this year, I have to start with the most obvious pick out of everybody, and that's Sheldon Creed, man. Now, I know that it's still early and things are liable to change. I understand that. But through the first 9 races of the Xfinity season, he's been up and down. Still, in his after multiple years in Xfinity so far now, he still has no wins. He's got 3 top 5s this year, 5 top 10s, with an okay average finish of 14.8. But to me, when you're sitting in the level of equipment he's sitting in, that's just not going to cut it for me. Now, some will look at those numbers and say, what's the problem? What's the problem with his stat line? It's not really a big problem, but I say it's a big problem for him considering the fact that he's been in the series multiple years, and that stat line, to me, would be more impressive if he were sitting in anything but a JGR equipment level car. Let's just keep it a buck and be honest. As someone who appreciates drivers stepping up when put in good to great equipment, he needs to step it up, I picked him as a championship favorite this year. Hell, I picked him to win the championship because I believe the change of scenery from RCR to JGR would be the most beneficial thing for him and the perfect scenario for him. But so far, that hasn't come to fruition. He'll be under my microscope going forward as a driver to watch, to be honest, to see can he finally improve, break through, and get a win and show the level of promise that he showed when he was at GMS and trucks and somewhat in certain races in RCR. The time has come. He's got to win. He's got to show some level of tact going forward because he hasn't shown what I needed to see so far this season. Now, moving on to another driver who's really disappointed me so far this season, and this time it's in the truck series, and that's Mr. Chase Purdy. He was on my disappointments video, or a driver that needs to step up video, a while back. A guy who I thought needed to step up, and perform at a better rate. You've been in truck series for years now, and you've not shown the level of performance that you need to show to move on to the next series, or at least stay in the rise that you've been put in. Through the first 7 races this year, he only has 1 top 5 finish, 1 top 10. He's only led a couple laps. His average finish and average start is worse than what it was last year. He's just been a big disappointment so far this year, and it's hard to watch. Now, if he was a rookie sitting in the truck series, sitting in good tier equipment, performing like this, I'd give him a little bit of a break, and if it was his first year. But considering that Roger Carruth has less experience in the truck series than he has and already has done things that Chase Purdy has yet to accomplish, which is win a race and show actual promise, is pretty astounding to me. Now, some of y'all may be wondering why I bring up Carruth. Well, it's pretty simple. They're teammates and they have the same fucking equipment. The fact that Kyle Busch and Roger Carruth were basically in the same equipment and ran for the same team both have wins this season, while Purdy only has 1 top 5 and 1 top 10 finish this year, is pretty alarming if you ask me. And regardless of whether or not it's only 7 races through the season, it's basically a third of the way through the year. And he hasn't proven to show the improvement that you need for a guy who's been in a series as long as he's been in. He's got to step it up and perform better going forward, or I don't know where he goes from here. This is his fourth year full time in trucks. It's time for him to show something. Otherwise, he's just going to be on a long list of guys who are forgotten in the sport. Now, I don't really know what is left to say when it comes to Austin Cindric, man. A guy who was highly touted coming out of the Xfinity Series, who has shown tremendous ability, winning a championship and almost winning a second in Xfinity. But since moving up to Cup outside of his rookie season, he's been completely non-existent. You know, two or three top fives, 6 or 7 top 10s through the first 44 or so races, you know, while sitting in top tier equipment, to me just isn't gonna cut it, man. It's not given. One top 5 through the first 10 races of the year in 2024 season coming out of the super speedway just isn't enough. This guy's got to show something, man. He's got to show some of the talent that he displayed in Xfinity Series up in Cup in the coming months, or people are just gonna start calling him and labeling him a Cup bust. I don't wish that upon him. I really like him, but you got to show promise at this level of NASCAR when you're sitting in top tier equipment. You can't just sit in top tier equipment for 5, 6, 7 years and think that's just going to suffice. It doesn't work like that in this sport anymore. So hopefully he can improve going forward, but from what I've seen so far, I don't see it happening. Another driver who's kind of disappointed me this year, who's pretty much underneath the radar, but not to the same scale as the other drivers I mentioned so far this year on this list, and that's Zane Smith. You know, a guy who I picked to win Rookie of the Year in my predictions video, hasn't really ran well all season long so far this year, and that's not really all his fault, but, you know, because I totally understand that he's running for Spire, which is still an up-and-coming team, still trying to improve this year, and he's basically in a transitional year with Trackhouse, so it's kind of just a get your feet wet type of year for him. But still, he's been getting outran by his rookie teammate Carson Hocevar all year long, who posts a better average start and finish so far this season by a decent margin. So I get it, you're not in the best situation, and I understand that, but you still got to show some level of improvement, you know, and show that you have the ability to perform at a heightened level compared to what some of the guys who are rookies like you in their first few starts can do. You know, 10 starts so far, no top 10s, no top 5s, 2 DNFs. You know, you haven't led a lap. He's not even qualifying well, and he's definitely not, you know, finishing well. So obviously I'm giving him a break. He's a rookie. I can't expect guys to come in and be like a Denny Hamlin or a Jimmy Johnson or one of these rookies who came in on fire. So I understand. Now, the last driver on the disappointment side of the coin when it comes to driver analysis that I wanted to speak on, who, to be honest, I don't need to speak on because I've spoken on this driver before in the past on a previous video. Somebody who's throughout their whole NASCAR tenure so far has not shown what they need to show to be sitting in the car that they're sitting in and getting the opportunities that they've gotten. And it's not me trying to rag on this person. It's just being honest and telling the truth, you know, and that's Miss Hailie Deegan. Now, feminist pitchforks, calm down before y'all start to kill me in the comment section or dislike the video. Please hear me out on this one. I like Hailie Deegan. I think she's, you know, shown glimpses of ability throughout her NASCAR career from ARCA all the way up to Xfinity, but it's just nowhere near enough when you consider the fact that the amount of sponsorship deals and the amount of opportunities she's been getting so far throughout her career in NASCAR compared to some of the drivers who are fighting to get rides and fighting to get opportunities that they, to me, clearly deserve. And I really wanted to harp in on this point about Deegan. I believe she's someone who wants to be good at the sport, somebody who actually takes it seriously and wants to win and be competitive going forward. But I question, in my opinion, how much work is she actually putting in during the race weeks, during the off season, when she has off time to get better and hone her craft. You know, she sure likes to race other things on her YouTube channel, you know, but I'm talking about actually stuff that can benefit her in NASCAR. She needs, in my opinion, to start taking her NASCAR career more seriously, because she's not going to keep getting chance after chance after chance after chance. Eventually, she will run out of opportunities, just like Danica Patrick did in NASCAR. and will fall to the wayside if she continues to underwhelm in terms of her performance. I could already hear a lot of excuses from her fan base starting in the comment section now, to be honest, just listening in my own head. It's her first full year in Xfinity, or she's with a new team, or a lot of the wrecks that she's been involved in haven't been her fault. The last point may be true, and that definitely doesn't play a factor, but it doesn't matter when you consider how piss poor she's been at qualifying this season. It's just common sense. If you always put yourself in a position where you're qualifying terribly in the back every freaking week, you're always going to put yourself in a position to get caught up in nonsensical wrecks with below average level talent. It's just common sense, Bottom line is she's got to step it up. I've been saying it for years. She's got to show something. Even most drivers that actually ended up becoming something, they show promise at some point, even early on in their career. Maybe not for a long period of time, but just something. I could go on a longer diatribe about her and go on a longer dialogue in terms of video, but I'll leave that for a separate video to speak about, in my opinion. The point is just will be more so redundant here. You guys get it. So hopefully we see some improvements going forward. Just something, some top 10s, some top 15, showing the ability to actually run well and show consistent speed throughout the entirety of a race. Anything of that nature would suffice when it comes to her, But I digress. Now, that was my quarterly review about what I've seen throughout the season so far and what I've liked, what I've disliked. Drivers who need to step it up and perform better that haven't really shown what I need to see from them. Hopefully the season continues to get better from a popularity standpoint and from a race quality standpoint, just watching going forward as the season gets deep into the start of the ridiculous playoffs. But, hopefully things get better and we see some guys who haven't really shown much this season start to show promise, or some guys who are having great seasons to start off continue to do what they're doing, have historic years. Because it makes the sport grow as a whole and helps the sport just in general. So we'll see what happens going forward as the season wanes. But I'll be back for the mid-season report on what I've seen and seeing if the drivers I've listed so far on this year and some of the things that have been going on this year have any change, or if anything anybody makes any big jump, or either going down or going up. So that's all I got when it comes to the quarterly review. Thank you guys all for watching. And as always, until we meet again.